Hello, welcome back for Unit 5 of our Modern World History course here at Waldorf University. In Unit 5, we're going to take a look at the Industrial Revolution, both on the discussion board as well as in your Unit 5 essay. When I think about our essays, one of the things that I'm starting to see as we're about halfway through the course is that I want to start to see us thinking critically about the evidence we're using on a week-to-week basis to build our arguments. And one of the ways to do that is to establish better credibility. A lot of the sources I'm seeing cited, or when I look at the reference sections of many of the papers I'm getting in the course, are either solely listing the textbook, which is fine, obviously a good source of information, but I'd like to see us triangulating that with other sources. And other sources of a higher quality. So kind of two things I'm seeing a lot of the time are either those sole textbook entries in the citations, or a textbook and then maybe some other kind of questionable sources that don't do anything to advance your credibility other than pulling in some outside information from maybe a kind of suspect source. So there's a few different things we can do here. First, think about who is writing whatever you are looking at as a source that you're going to include in your written work. And one of the things we want to think about there is expertise. And so to determine expertise, one of the things we want to think about is why should you be listening to the person that you are pulling the information from? Lots of people develop expertise. If we think back to our evaluating evidence skill, we talked a little bit about an announcement a few weeks ago. We want to be thinking about why you should be listening to the person, what kind of audience they're writing for, and who's publishing that account. So if you're just going on the internet, you're hopping onto Google and pulling up whatever those first results are, oftentimes it's content that's very difficult to find the author. They're writing for a very general, non-scholarly audience, and those kind of things aren't going to build your credibility at all. If you were to hop over to the Waldorf Online Library and find something from a peer-reviewed journal, or go to the resources tab on Blackboard and use some of those better developed sources, that's going to enhance your own credibility and strengthen the arguments you're making by pulling in relevant research from a respected source. So those are a couple of things I want us to think about as we put together a Unit 5 essay. On the discussion board this week, we have a pretty straightforward question thinking about financial and economic changes, as well as technological advantages, social consequences, rest of all of these things that are going to be impacted by the Industrial Revolution. What I want you to answer at the base of it is, what did humankind gain from the Industrial Revolution? What did it lose? And this maybe ties into how historians think about progress and decline, this idea of, if we're going to talk about progress or we're going to talk about decline, we need to talk about for whom is any kind of historical continuity or change going to be viewed as progress, and for whom is it going to be decline. So as we look at the Industrial Revolution, sometimes students will cast this as being all progress. There are a lot of great things, including our modern society, that's birthed out of this new kind of industrial age we enter at the end of the 1800s. But when we look at this globally, and of course, like modern world history, we want to see who's being advantaged, who's being disadvantaged, who is benefiting the most from this, who's maybe suffering from these kind of advances. And I think this can provide us with a really unique discussion board opportunity this week to represent our own perspectives, bring in some of that quality outside information, and then have a good conversation over there. Especially as we head into the second half of the course here, I want to encourage you to continue to engage on the discussion board. Some of you are losing points week to week because you're just not really contributing much of anything in your second response. As I warned you at the beginning of the class, just kind of putting together really poor quality secondary kind of responses is going to cost you. The idea that 50% of your grade for the discussion board comes from that first post, 50% comes from the second post. I really need to see you contributing something of value, whether it be bringing in some outside sources, whether it be representing your own perspective faithfully, other than just telling somebody they're doing a good job. So really focus on that as we head into the second part of the course. The other thing this week is your Unit 5 essay. We talked about sources a little bit, but again, you just have to write a couple of pages here, include your APA-style citations, and you're looking at kind of the Industrial Revolution in a broader context. A lot of times we'll talk about the Industrial Revolution as a Western or European dominant kind of event where first, we're going to see the Industrial Revolution taking place in England. Eventually, we're going to see that come to the United States. And we see this really as kind of this triumphant European phenomenon. And what I want you to think about are some of these other questions. Why didn't it take place earlier? What changes allowed or encouraged the rise of industry at the time and not another? And why did it happen where it happened? Some of the things we got to think about, one of the things that the Industrial Revolution brings about is a globalized society. As people start creating supply chains that circle the globe and we're creating interdependent systems, the Industrial Revolution has a lot to do with that. And so, although maybe we're looking at this blooming in places like England and the United States, it's also being driven by natural resources from other places, by transportation networks that are developing globally, and ideas that are coming from all over the world. So I want you to explore that a little bit for your essay this week. Make sure you're using quality research to support what you're putting together there, and make sure you're reaching out if you have any questions. I am here to help however I can, and I do appreciate the hard work you've put in the course so far, and I look forward to the great things you're going to do this week. Good luck.